I know that many of you also are having an unusual Mother's Day. Maybe you are moms, or maybe you can't see mom. And many mothers, of course, are not with us because they're incarcerated for small things that really are not a reason to be in jail at all, but separated from their families. And many, many mothers and grandmothers are working the front lines in service industries, caring for people in hospitals and nursing homes, in grocery stores. And so I want to extend our circle to include all the mothers and all the grandmothers, wherever they are and whatever they're engaged in today, because mothers uphold life on the planet, and we have much more in common with each other than we have differences, no matter whether it's a mother in Iran or a mother in China, a mother in Nicaragua, Cuba, Venezuela, or a mother in Syria, or a mother here in Maine. We have in common our strong commitment to sustaining life and to upholding life-giving practices. The great scourge of militarism has been marching through my entire lifetime, gobbling up resources and warping our priorities so that we see other people as enemies or competitors rather than our fellow human beings. Right now, during a global health crisis, the likes of which we have not seen, it's even more important to cooperate and collaborate and to work together as human beings, bringing our best minds, our best understanding, our commitment, our resources, and our humanity, our desire to care for each other and to care for one another together to work on solving the crisis caused by the COVID-19 disease. I know that many mothers will be grieving today because they've lost someone. And really, as a world, as a planet, we're grieving because so many lives have been taken from us by a disease that we didn't see coming and we're not quite sure what to do about. But we know that cooperation and collaboration and sharing information, forming mutual aid societies to share resources, giving to food pantries, sharing what we have with others if we have enough, helping people experiencing homelessness get into housing where they can shelter in place safely, and supporting people with the demands of our government that now more than ever it is time to give Medicare for all, an expanded single payer health care for everyone who is resident in the United States. This is a public health issue. It's not about one individual or one family deserving health care or not deserving health care. We all deserve to take care of our collective health. And as we've seen, it really cannot be done in a for-profit healthcare system. Our for-profit healthcare is failing us badly in terms of testing, in terms of taking care of people who are already ill. And we've seen that the scramble for profits and even profiteering that has happened over materials that in a country, in a wealthy country such as ours, all the other wealthy countries that have national healthcare systems have planned and provided for their people and cooperated with other countries. The level of international cooperation going on right now between nations is really impressive. It's sad that the United States uses this opportunity to double down on the sanctions that we have against 39 nations on the planet are struggling with the pandemic and at the same time struggling with economic unilateral coercion by the United States that is designed to pressure their people into rising up and demanding a change of government. So it's a regime change strategy. It seems unspeakably cruel to use a terrible disease as the cover to try to change the government of countries that aren't falling into line with us. And I know for sure, because I've talked to so many people from one end of the US to the other, that the people of the US do not agree with this strategy. They do not wish to see other people suffer unnecessarily. The US wants to see itself as a leader in the world, and coming back to being having a moral center and exhibiting good moral thinking and moral leadership is the way back. Exerting force is not the way to gain the respect and trust of the rest of the world. We as Americans, unfortunately, have been subjected to decades of an entire lifetime of propaganda to convince us that the response to every conflict must be the application of superior force, and that there really is no other human nature other than aggressiveness and competitiveness and a kind of a scramble to climb up on top of other people in order to be at the top of the heap. I've very often been told, well, humans have always made war and humans have always been violent. As a student of ancient history, I don't think that's true. I think we have evidence of civilizations that had no weapons, no trace of warfare was found. And I think that we have really our corporations that are profit mad and care only to enrich themselves and their shareholders have controlled our media to the point where children grow up playing very violent games and thinking that this is a normal human activity to kill people for points. And it's very, very hard for us to find real information, true information that's useful to us and that makes us remember what's good about humanity and how we can work together and cooperate and help one another. It's very hard to find that kind of messaging in our mainstream media. I'm very grateful for alternative media. I'm very grateful for the Green Party and the values that it represents. These are life affirming values. These are values that say we want an end to endless war. We don't want to spend 50, 60, 70% of our federal discretionary budget each year on the Pentagon and its contractors. We don't want to burden students with crushing debt that lasts them a lifetime, but just to gain higher education so that they can do important jobs like teach and be doctors and nurses and all the other ways that people want to contribute to society. It's very important to me to talk to people face to face and eye to eye. It's been much more challenging, of course, as I've continued to stay home. I'm just ending a 25-year career as a school teacher here in central Maine. And someone said to me the other day, I'm surprised that you're retiring, Lisa. I know how important the students were, are to you. And I said, what I'm doing now, running for the US Senate seat of Susan Collins, that's for the children too. I have seen how much families of the children that go to my school struggle economically in a system that was designed for them to fail. CEO salaries go through the roof, and there hasn't been a rise in real wages for working people in 10 years. And I live in an area with very few jobs. And even people that have a job and can get there, because there's really no public transportation in my area either, are just one mistake or one accident or one illness away from disaster always. And their ability to keep a roof over their children's heads and food on the table is very threatened by any kind of unusual event. Well, now here we are in the pandemic. 1/3 of people couldn't make their April 1st rent payment nationwide. May 1st had to have been worse. I haven't seen statistics yet on how many people didn't make their rent payment May 1st. Millions of people are out of work and lost their health insurance the minute that they were laid off from work, because tying health care to employment is a ridiculous system, and the ridiculousness of it has been exposed very much under the pressure of COVID-19. And many people have filed for unemployment and are still waiting to get that first check. And many of us are still waiting for a stimulus check, a one-time stimulus check we were promised that still hasn't arrived. If you're one of these people wondering how you're going to put a meal on the table next week, you are not alone. And it is not your fault, and it is not a failing on your part or anyone else in your family's part to be struggling in these times. All the other wealthy countries in the world, other than the US, have provided a stipend to their citizens, to their residents, because they wanted people to be able to stay home. It isn't reasonable to tell people just stay home, but you will have no income and you won't be able to buy food or pay the rent. Of course, our frontline workers, I have two nurses in my family. Both my sister and my niece are nurses in hospitals, have been working very hard. And many of our healthcare workers are becoming discouraged and exhausted by the pandemic, which is still climbing. And our leadership in Washington has been very, very weak and very wrongheaded on this front. I often ask my volunteers, why would you still be motivated to work on a US Senate campaign during a public health crisis that you're struggling with? And their answer is remarkably consistent, because we see that real leadership in Washington at the federal level is lacking, and we're worried about that. We don't know that we don't really feel like we have a voice in Congress. We don't really feel like the people representing us in Congress are really listening. And the leadership from the executive branch has been particularly poor, with a huge amount of disrespect shown to the very scientists who've spent their lives training to meet such a crisis and help people get through. Lots of conflicting information, and really using the pandemic as a political football to stir up white supremacists and armed militias marching on our state legislatures, the ones that have governors of the other party. You know, this is dangerous. It's certainly not helping the pandemic curve flatten. And I think that it's has scared many people into thinking um, this seems like it would be an opportunity, because so much of our economic system came to a sudden halt and in an artificial way. But some of the silver linings of that are that the atmosphere has really bounced back. So much greenhouse gas that would normally be emitted hasn't been. We're seeing bluer skies again. And many people that aren't worried about finances and that are doing okay on the stay at home have said, what a nice chance to quiet down a little bit, to go a little slower, spend more time reading, spend more time taking a walk with my husband, spend more time reaching out to friends that I know are home alone, and having a good long phone call, not feeling rushed. And, oh, this is one more thing I must get through, but really taking the time to connect with one another. So there have been some some silver linings to this tragedy, but at the same time, we're very concerned to see that a push that we must reopen the economy, as if the economy were more important than the people. You know, the people's health and well-being is meant to be supported by the economy, not vice versa. And as a biology professor whose article I was reading yesterday put it, if we don't get a hold of if we don't get a handle on the biology, the economy will not recover. I think we all know that this illness has a potential to last a very long time unless we can achieve sufficient levels of testing and contact tracing and quarantining. And that's just not happening now. So many of us are writing it out at home and reaching out across things like Zoom and live streaming, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. These have become increasingly important to us just to connect with other human beings. It's certainly not the same as a Mother's Day where you get together with your grandma and your aunt and your mom and all the relatives are there and you hug and you have a nice meal together. It's just not the same, but it still doesn't mean that we need to be isolated or sad on a family holiday, where out of love for our family and out of respect for the scientists who are warning us what we should do to keep our families safe, we are staying apart on this special day. I think many of you know that after the carnage of the US Civil War, a woman leader named Julia Ward Howe made a Mother's Day proclamation. This was in 1870. And if I could paraphrase her words a bit, it was to say, we women are too feeling and compassionate to train our children to kill another mother's child. And that kind of solidarity among mothers to see that any child and any person, no matter how confused they may have become, is a beloved child and deserves to be treated with love and respect and nurture throughout their life. So Mother's Day was originally a holiday about ending war and making a commitment not to pursue wars. We have found ourselves in a capitalist system of patriarchy that has elevated militarism to the highest value of the land. And there's even legislation in the House of Representatives right now to draft women as well as men if another big war came along. I'm an idealistic person. I'm running for the US Senate because I believe we can do better. I know we can do better. And I'm very encouraged by the confidence that people have expressed to me in my ability to raise my voice and speak my truth without fear, and not worry too much if it doesn't fit with the status quo. When people ask me what my experience is, I was a union negotiator and vice president of a teachers union for several years, and I've represented people in that way before. But as far as experience being a senator, well, I don't have any experience taking money from corporate lobbyists. I don't have any experience taking money from corporate CEOs or from the super PACs that launder corporate money so that candidates can claim they don't take corporate money when really they do. I lack that kind of experience. When I am a senator, I will be there to represent the people of Maine and their best interests, not a corporation that made a huge donation to my campaign fund. I have taken the pledge that Green Party candidates take to say, I will neither solicit nor accept donations from corporations. Once you've taken their money, yes, you can buy a lot of television advertisements, but you're not your own person anymore. I'm somewhat inspired in this quest to represent Maine in the Senate by the failure of the current occupant. The incumbent, Susan Collins, has done a very poor job of representing Maine's interests, and she's very unpopular right now as a result. But I am inspired by the example of a very famous senator from Maine, Margaret Chase Smith. Margaret Chase went to high school with my grandfather in Skowhegan, Maine, and they remained friends for life. She went into politics, and he served in the Maine House and Maine legislature for many years, and they continued to be friends in a small town. I've met Senator Smith, and she is most famous for as a freshman senator. So she had been in the House already, but her first term in the Senate, McCarthyism was just tearing a path through Congress, and people's careers and lives were being ruined by being accused of being communists. And she was not a very large woman. She was pretty petite, and she stood up there and gave a speech that was called the Declaration of Conscience. And in it, she said, we people that talk the most about being un-American, it seems to me, have forgotten the core American values, such as the right to hold an unpopular opinion, the right to speak up even if others don't agree with you. And she basically dared Senator Joe McCarthy, a bully, to call her a communist, and essentially said, "We don't like bullies in Maine. We don't put up with them." And her speech galvanized the Senate, and many senators rushed over to shake her hand afterwards. Others had been fearful of their career because Joe McCarthy was powerful and would retaliate if you spoke up against him. I'm again reminded of my grandfather was in the Maine legislature when hydropower was going through in Maine for the first time. And the lobbyists for hydropower said to him, if you don't vote with us, we will hurt you. And the family story is that my grandfather said, only my son or my wife could hurt me. What are you talking about? He didn't like being threatened. So I think that I can stand up to that kind of pressure and those kind of threats. I have a wonderful team that has gotten us this far, where we've been very successful at attracting volunteers that are very hardworking for us. We made ballot access. We got over 9,000 signatures on Super Tuesday in one day to get on the ballot. We weren't able to get on the ballot as a Green. The rules are made so that a third party really can't get on the ballot in Maine. The Bangor Daily News got our Secretary of State to admit that in the paper, but we pivoted, I unenrolled as a Green, and we applied for ballot access using 5,500 of our signatures, thousands of them from Portland. We didn't turn in. They were still stuck in the town clerk's office in Portland because of the pandemic. But we continue to have new volunteers joining us every week, doing lots of social media work, lots of database work, phone banking, FaceTime sharing. We're doing a lot of work on Zoom. We have calls several times a week where we get together and work. And if volunteers want to join us, our website is Lisa for Maine, like the sign behind me, with the 4 spelled out and the E on the end of Maine.org. And that is the place that you can see updates about the campaign, see how to get involved yourself. If you go to the Action tab, it takes you to a page that says, are you willing to volunteer? And if you fill that in, I guarantee you that we will reach out to you and ask you, what your skill set is, what are your interests, and welcome you on board the team. So we have a long path ahead of us. It's the primary in this race was pushed to a month to July 14th. So even though I won't be in the primary because I'm an unenrolled or independent candidate, we won't know officially for sure who the Democratic candidate is until July 14th, and I won't be officially on the ballot. But we're very excited about the prospect of traveling around Maine when we're able to, meeting as many Mainers as possible and really, really listening to them. I had a great volunteer or like a friend-raising call with Pat LaMarche. Pat is a past Green Party candidate for governor here in Maine. And she had invited some friends who were very interested to talk about saving our post office. They had worked for the post office, and they had been mad at Susan Collins since '06 when she sponsored a bill to destroy the financial security of the U.S. Postal Service. And right now it's in trouble because of that bill back in '06. But one of the things that I think we all realize about the post office is we probably won't be able to have elections in a pandemic if we can't count on the postal service. Some states mail a ballot to every voter, and I hope to see Maine do that. But these kind of common government services, the U.S. Post Office isn't actually a government service, but the government has decision-making power over much of it. But things like public health care, a Green New Deal, a demilitarized Green New Deal to shut down the weapons factories and convert them without any loss of jobs, in fact, creating more good union jobs to build the things that we need. Maine is desperately in need of a train system, so we can get out of our cars and move around safely and in a sustainable way. There are many things that could be built in our weapons factories. We could be building hospital ships to send around the world. We could be building clean energy systems to help us meet our energy needs. And I think that these policies, which are for everyone and help everyone, are the kind of policies that I'm excited about promoting and bringing my voice to bear for those policies, because having our senators represent big corporations that are mostly interested in profits and not people's well-being is a terrible system. As we can see, it's failing badly in the face of a public health emergency. So I don't feel pessimistic. I feel very optimistic. I have met so many wonderful, dedicated, intelligent, hardworking people that are with us in this effort to get voices in Washington that will speak for what the people need and want. And I know that our values are solid and that we can prevail if we all work together. We have to be smart. We have to be willing to be flexible problem solvers. I have 3 grown children. I have 4 grandchildren. I'm very proud of all my sons. All my children are boys. And I was talking to my oldest son who's about to become a father this year, and I said, when I was raising you all, the thing that I thought the most about in terms of your education was I wanted to raise you to become flexible problem solvers because I could tell I had no idea what you would have to face in your lives. So the best thing to do was to make you able to think out of the box, to break a paradigm when it needs breaking, to get out of get out of the forest and look down and kind of see a bigger picture and where you fit in it and where your efforts could make a difference. I feel happy to say that all three of my sons, I'm very proud of them. They're wonderful dads and husbands and sons, and I'm very, very encouraged to know that so many people on the planet share our values, share our life sustaining values. And on this Mother's Day, I would like to remind everyone that there are more of us than there are profit mongers, and that if we stop cooperating in the system of militarism and profit driven decisions, it cannot be sustained. We are upholding it with our labor and with our beliefs. So we really need to band together and stop doing that. Um, we have had some wonderful leadership in Maine throughout the pandemic. Our particularly the head of the Maine CDC, Dr. Shaw, has been a very steady voice, sharing what he knows with us and giving us some advice about how to proceed. Very early on, when little was known, Dr. Shaw was asked, "What should we do?" And I'm going to end my address by sharing what Dr. Shaw said to everyone. He said, "Call your mother. She wants to hear from you." Thank you, everyone. Happy Mother's Day. Be well. And I look forward to hearing from you.